Okay, here we go. So I have no relevant disclosures. So the world of anastomotic healing used to be a myth that we all subscribe to, sort of a dogma that based on the three factors: the blood supply, the patient factors, the stapling or suturing technique, and we all thought the world was flat and we sort of were happy with it. But here comes the Galileo of modern time, Dr. John Alverdi, who dispelled the dogma and said there are other factors, and we should look deeper, and we should dig deeper to see if there's any specific factors that we can uncover in addition to those three whales of anastomotic healing. Even though I'm from University of Chicago, I will not be talking about bacteria. I think Dr. Shogun covered it very well, so you'll be spared that. But what I'll be talking and kind of exploring a little bit deeper is the blood supply of the anastomosis, that despite our revelation that bacteria causes all of the anastomotic leaks, I think blood supply contributes to those as well. And as was mentioned during the previous talk, we can use conventional methods, sort of archaic methods of assessing blood flow to the anastomosis. We can look, see if the bowel looks pink or mucosa looks pink. We can see if it bleeds after we take the clamp off. We can feel for blood supply by palpating the major vessels. We can listen using a Doppler, but ultimately what we do want is we want to measure. We want to get some idea as accurately as possible how good is the blood supply, and ultimately what is the oxygen tension, what is the oxygen delivery. So enter Green Lantern, a superhero that is called to save the world from anastomotic leaks. But like any superhero, you can imagine superhero has the superpowers and it has some weaknesses. So we'll explore those. Well, as you can imagine, the world of ICG-9 experienced a dramatic explosion. It was known since 1960s, and it was sort of hiding in the shadows, and then suddenly the world rediscovered it, partly because the technology caught up to the ICG. Why is it so? Is because now we can use laparoscopic technology as well as open technology to image the blood supply and use ICG as a surrogate indicator of how well the tissues are supplied. And that goes not only with intestinal tissue, but also skin, biliary tree, ureters, and it's used in ophthalmology. The principle of the ICG imaging is fairly straightforward. The ICG is a large molecule that irreversibly binds to albumin as soon as it's injected. And traveling together with albumin, we use it as a presumptive surrogate for the blood flow. The excitation of ICG is made by shining a near-infrared light, approximately 700 to 800 nanometer wavelength, and it penetrates 1 to 2 centimeters deep, which can be used for skin imaging, such as flaps for breast surgery and plastic surgery, and for our application as intestinal serosal imaging. And then the camera captures the fluorescence, and as I mentioned, modern technology now combines the exciting light and a camera all in one unit. Intraoperative imaging has really made for wonderful pictures that we can show at presentations and show our colleagues. And if you see something like this, when you inject the ICG and you shine the light on it and it all turns green, everybody's high-fiving and everybody's happy, and we did a great job. But if you see something like this, you start wondering what to do with it. Now, I want to stop here and take a brief poll of the audience. Looking at this image, obviously you see the normally appearing serosa on the left, and ICG does not shine on the right side of the bowel. How many of you would resect the bowel that is not perfused? Okay. How many would not resect the bowel and still make anastomosis using conventional methods such as visual observation under white light? A few. How many of you would say we need more information? And that's what we're going to be talking about. So when we see the green shining, we're happy. When we don't see green shining, we don't know what to do with this information. So we have it, but we don't know. Some people will say resect, Sure, but what if you resect the bowel and now you're short? Now you feel like you can't make anastomosis, and now you're going to have tension on anastomosis. You're trading one problem for another. Or you're trying to trim. Are you sure the bowel is non-viable? And that's something that we need to explore a little bit further. So Ben Shogun and I, a number of years ago, wrote a review article where we asked the specific question: how much blood supply do you really need to make sure your anastomosis has a good chance to heal? And it turns out you can get away with fairly significant drop in perfusion. A study done using a fairly sophisticated yet very cumbersome technique using laser depth flowmetry showed that up to 70% of blood flow can be sacrificed before a significant concern for anastomotic leak is reached. So we don't really know if drop in the blood flow is really significantly detrimental based on the ICG imaging. The study that I'm sure all of you wanted to see and talk about and coming in expected to see is the Pillar 2 trial. Now, the Pillar 2 trial is the one that we all hoped will provide us some idea what to make of the ICG imaging. 139 patients from multiple centers were recruited, and the study was primarily aiming to see if it's feasible and if it can provide us with information that we can use clinically. The surgeons, when they imaged the anastomosis at the time of anastomosis creation, noted that in 11 patients, 8%, there was significant decrease in perfusion as evidenced by lack of green fluorescence, and therefore those were revised. And based on that, the anastomotic healing was low. So none of the people who were revised leaked. I will argue to you that this study is flawed. Why? Because you don't know whether your intervention really contributed to lack of the leaks. One would expect that if you use visual evaluation and say the bowel looks reasonably normal, I would have made anastomosis under other circumstances, and the green fluorescence contributed this information, would you not want to leave it in place and see what happens? Well, some people argue it's unethical. Again, we don't really know what to make with this information, and therefore those people who were re-resected, they didn't leak. We don't know how much the fluorescence contributed. There was a fairly extensive meta-analysis published in January of last year that summarized other studies, all of them done in a retrospective fashion. All of them lack control, and these authors used a retrospective controlled cohort studies. The information we gleaned from this meta-analysis is that on the forest plot there is a favorable data, slightly favorable, towards benefit of ICG imaging in colonic anastomosis, and this seems to be a little bit more pronounced in the colorectal anastomosis. So that means that ICG somehow, by changing the operative strategy, contributed and improved the outcomes. We all expect the randomized controlled trials, and currently there are 3 trials that are listed on the NIH website. One of them, the last one, that was using SpyElite and Pinpoint, has been terminated and no longer active. The 2 other studies are ongoing and recruiting, and the question would be, of course, does this really change how the anastomosis heal? And we eagerly await those studies. In conclusion, I wanted to pose a lot more questions than answers whether the green lantern is going to really save the world from anastomotic leaks. So it holds promise, but we definitely want to see the results of randomized prospective trials. I think what we really need is not the green light, but I think we need the number. We need the number, whether it's going to be a percentage of the blood flow or the oxygen tension equivalent, that will enable us to make a decision in the operating room what to do with that bowel that we about to anastomose. Can the effects of relative ischemia be mitigated by increased FiO2, or, as Dr. Shogun mentioned, by use antibiotics selectively based on the data we get about suspected ischemia? Can ischemia improve during the postoperative period? And finally, we need to know a little bit more of how our human body, particularly ischemia, talks to the bacteria and how bacteria react to that. With that, I would like to stop. And again, thank you for giving me that opportunity. Okay.